This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we're dealing with the Roper washing machine that isn't agitating and isn't spinning. So we're going to be replacing the motor coupler. So I removed a couple of Phillips head screws from the back of the console and tilted it back. Pulled up on the modular connector for the lid switch. I'm going to pry back this brass clip with a standard head screwdriver on the right and left side. It's pretty cool how these just pop out. And then I'll be able to just remove the whole cabinet. I'll open the lid and then I'm going to pull it toward me so it's about 45 degrees and just pull it now away from the chassis, away from the frame. Kind of get it out of the way. Pretty cool how this machine comes apart. This is basically the Whirlpool Direct Drive Series 80. So now I'm removing the modular connector from the motor, because I need to remove the motor to get to the motor coupler. The motor coupler breaks if the machine gets overloaded, like with something too heavy like a blanket. And then I need to remove the water pump, and I'll just pull these little clips off. You can use a standard head screwdriver to help you do it. They just pop off. And you can grab the whole pump and pull it towards you. It'll come off the motor shaft. And then I usually just push the pump out of the way so it's not in the way as I remove the motor. I'm going to remove these little clips that hold on the water pump, and then I have some 1/4-inch screws I'll zip out. And these are, some models have these screws, some don't. They all have these clips that hold the motor. The older ones don't have these screws. You almost don't need them. I'm going to pry off the bottom clip. Now when you pry off the top clip, watch out, because the motor could just fall. So kind of hold it as you pry off that clip. So we're supporting it. We get that top clip off by prying it up with a standard head screwdriver. And then the motor will come out towards you. And you can just, it's kind of heavy, just put it off to the side. And there is our motor coupler. This one appears to be cracked. It has 2 fork assemblies. The front one, closest to us, that one's snapped. Probably got overloaded with a big blanket or a bunch of bathroom mats, or too big of a load. So we have to be careful with this machine not to overload it. So we're going to pull out the plastic fork that was broken. We're going to take out the rubber piece that kind of absorbs the shock, and then we're going to use a standard head screwdriver behind the one on the transmission and just kind of bend it towards you until it pops off. There we go. So now we have the new one. These don't cost very much. Probably get them on Amazon. We're going to push it in place, but also we have to kind of pound it onto the motor shaft and onto the transmission to make it sit flush. So here's the other one that goes on the motor. This goes on the motor on the short part of the shaft. The longer part of the shaft goes on the water pump. I'm going to use a socket and an extension to pound this coupler fork on, because I want to get it to where it's flush with the end of the shaft. And it just takes a few taps. I'm using the socket so it puts even pressure on the fork assembly. I'm doing that on both sides. Here's the one on the transmission, so I'll pop that on. Sorry about the camera work. We're just popping on that same fork assembly. This is on the transmission. And then we can add the rubber piece. It's all brand new parts. We're going to put the rubber piece so that one of the openings in the rubber is pointing toward 12 o'clock. And then on the motor, we're going to make the top part of the fork point toward 12 o'clock. And we'll make sure these rubber grommets are all in place. And the one in the transmission, we want it to point towards 6 o'clock so they can match up. That's where the little grommets are going to go. And these little forks are going to go into these holes. So now we're going to put in the bottom clip for the motor to kind of help hold it up. And just take your time here. This part's a little tricky because you have to line up those forks. Those plastic forks have to fit into that rubber piece, and you can't really see well. If you look over to the left, you may be able to see better what's going on. You have to hold it up Just take your time and you'll be able to line it all up. You got to kind of wiggle things around. It's okay to take the motor away and then realign the forks with the rubber piece until it looks like it's going to match up. And then once you have it in place, put the bottom clip up to help hold it. Still have to support it. And then we're going to put in the top clip and we're going to click it down. So we now have those two clips clicked into place. The motor is being held pretty securely, but we'll add those screws. Just zip those 1/4-inch screws in. That just gives it even more support. These are really good washing machines. People typically are getting 20 years of life out of these machines. But in the 22 years that I had one, I had to replace the motor coupler twice. So I'm going to line up the shaft on the water pump opening with the shaft on the motor to make the keyed shape of the shaft fit with the shape of the water pump. Make sure I have them lined up. And then all I got to do is just push the pump onto that shaft. Everything just fits together really easily on this machine. And again, this is just a Whirlpool direct drive. There's a Series 70, 80, and 90. I think this is a Series 80. They're all pretty similar. So I got the pump back on. I'll put those little clips on to hold it. They just snap on. Some of these models have a capacitor, start capacitor, run capacitor on the motor, and some don't. This one, the capacitor is on a different part of the machine, so you don't have to hook it back up. But you do have to hook up this modular connector for bringing power to the motor. There we go. I also had the machine tilted up about 45 degrees while I did all this to make it a little bit easier. I'm putting the case back on, so I'm going to just slide the bottom of the case up against the frame. You can see it here. It's pushed up against the frame. And then I'm going to let the case bring back down to a level position. And I'm going to bring the back plate, this silver plate, I'm going to pull it up close and then just let the cabinet set down again against that plate. And then I should be able to put in my little brass clips. So I'll put one underneath here, and then I'll line it up and just push down. It'll click in. So cool. We got the modular connector done and the other clip done. So now we can put the console back on. We have to hook up these little feet here on the bottom of the console, goes into the frame. And then we put in two Phillips head screws on the back, one here and one on the other side, one here. We'll zip those in. We're pretty much done. We just have to push the machine back into position. And then I like to lift up at this point on the back of the machine. I grab it by the console, lift it up a few times. It has self-leveling legs in the back that help to get the machine more level. So it's a good thing to do at the very end of the procedure. And we can just plug it in and give it a test. So we'll set it for spin. It's draining really good. We can hear it spinning and we can see it spinning. So that's working. We have our agitation and spin back because the motor is able to turn the transmission. Just give it one more test. So it looks great. So thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe when you get a chance.